Hey everyone, so this is going to be a look at the new, well, it's still new, it's been out for a bit, but it's the BenQ XL2420G. This is a G-Sync capable monitor, and what you're actually looking at right now is not the BenQ, it's actually my Izio Forus FG21. So I'm actually going to be showing a comparison as best I can between this monitor and the BenQ. The BenQ is over here, which I actually have duplicated both displays, so it's showing the same thing. Right now I'm showing a movie. It's called Mission to Mars. Now, just so everyone knows, this is actually a compressed high definition playback file, so it's not coming off a Blu-ray or anything like that, but it's still reasonable quality, so I think it's okay to show. And I don't really know if it's gonna if this video is gonna turn out so great by showing the differences because of my camera. I actually have it set on auto right now, so it actually might try and do its best to compensate between what I'm, both monitors, so you might not get exactly what I can see with my eye, but that's what I'm gonna talk to you guys about. So the BenQ is actually a TN based panel. So there's many different panels out there. There's TN, which is the most common. There's IPS, which is becoming even more popular, and a lot of phones now use it. And then we have VA panels. And then there's there's just so many different variations of VA even, and then there's PLS, and there's just so many different ones. But by far the three I would say most common are TN, IPS, and VA. So the BenQ is a TN panel, which means it's going to have really fast response time. Things like ghosting and things like that after images, you won't really notice because it's such a fast panel. And that's primarily the main benefit of a TN panel. And now with G-Sync, there's a lot of monitors that are coming out that are G-Sync enabled, but they're mainly on TN panels. They're starting to come out on IPS and things like that, and I even think I saw one being announced for a VA panel. But in terms of what my personal preference is, I personally prefer VA panels, and that's what we have over here. Mainly because a VA panel has the highest contrast ratio that you can pretty much get in a consumer monitor for a computer. So with a high contrast ratio, it also means you're going to have great blacks as well. So a lot of times what you'll see in monitors is that the blacks don't really look black. They look like they have a washed out look to them. So they're actually kind of more like a light gray rather than a deep black. So this is the VA panel, and you can see the black levels are amazing. But then when you look over here, I'm sure you can see kind of outside the letterbox, you can see a little bit of a glow, and it's actually because the blacks are not true black. It's like a gray, so you can see that, and even the actual image itself. This is actually a great scene. You can see between the three guys, it just seems like there's kind of like a matte, like kind of like a washed out screen in front of them. But then when we go over here, it looks perfect. Now the guy in the middle is a little bit overexposed because I think of my camera, but in this direction. But I mean, the blacks you can see inside the letterbox, outside the letterbox area, the blacks are perfect. It just looks like there's nothing in front of them. It doesn't look washed out, or like there's this light gray over the three guys. Then when we go over here, it doesn't look nearly as good. And I think this is going to show in the video because I can see it on my little display preview here. So yeah, that is the biggest failing point in my opinion of TN panels, is that the contrast ratio, you're never going to get as good as a VA panel. Like this BenQ is rated for 1,000 to 1. but that's, you know, in an ideal situation. I've calibrated both these monitors as best I can, so I'm not trying to make the BenQ look worse or, you know, make this look better. This is just trying to, you know, get them as close as I can in terms of colors and, you know, contrast and blacks and everything. The other advantage of the VA panels is that the color accuracy is a lot better. So you're gonna get closer to that sweet spot of 6500. Whereas a TN panel, you're not gonna. They're getting better. Like, this is probably the best that I've seen, but it's still not as good. But the main selling point of this BenQ is G-Sync. The VA panel that I have on my left is just a standard 120 hertz monitor. This BenQ is 144 hertz, and it's G-Sync. The other advantage I forgot to VA panels versus TN is a VA panel, whether you're looking straight on or you're looking from the side, if you go over this way, you know, it retains more of the image quality that you get when you look straight on. Whereas you know, the TN panels, once you start going like so, you can see we're losing some quality on the right hand side, and it's introducing kind of like a glow on the right hand side. Then once you move over forward though, you can see it looks pretty good, right? So if you're looking straight on, a TN panel is fine, but if you want to be able to look from the side like this, a TN panel is not for you. You want to go with a VA panel. So I mean, it might seem that I'm kind of knocking this monitor, but I don't want to understate the fact that, you know, G-Sync is definitely a huge improvement. And I mean, for a lot of people, you know, who might not care about so much about the, you know, the great contrast and necessarily getting the most accurate colors and deep crisp blacks, all they might care about is the smoothest gameplay that they can get. That's definitely, the BenQ is definitely going to be better at that. I'm going to try now to show the difference between G-Sync and no G-Sync on these monitors. So I will cut to that and see if I can show it to you on this camera. I don't know if I'll be able to really show it because of the difference between what I'm shooting at in my frames per second and the frames per second that are going to be displayed on the screen. So I'll try my best and we'll see what happens. Okay, so this is actually a demo made specifically to show off G-Sync, made by NVIDIA. So right now I'm showing you the VA panel that doesn't support G-Sync, and you'll see, you know, hopefully you'll see as the camera is moving across the pillars, it's introducing a kind of artifact going from down to bottom and left to right. So, you know, if someone were to be playing this, you know, they would think something's wrong with their monitor. Honestly, like it doesn't look right. You know, if someone didn't know what was going on here and understand the mechanics of it all, they probably would bring back this monitor and go, I have a broken monitor. But it's just, that's how it works. But then when we go over to here to G-Sync, let's see if I can get it. Trying to adjust the exposure here. So you can see the pillars, it's smoother. It's not showing that, you know, that visual artifacting as, you know, as it is on my VA panel. I've zoomed out and made it go a little faster to show the VA panel here with no G-Sync, to see if it can show it a little bit better. But you can see, I mean, I can see it. I don't know if I'll be able to see it on this video after I look at it, but there's, you know, a lot of visual artifacting with no G-Sync, and this is with VSync off. Now, if I were to turn on VSync, the tearing would go away, but it still wouldn't feel as smooth as, say, this right here. So the benefit of G-Sync is no artifacting, and I mean, it's a lot smoother of an experience. I mean, you're still gonna get, like, I mean, G-Sync only works from 30 frames per second and up. So if you are playing a game and you fall below 30 frames per second, it's going to revert to either, depending on how you set it up, with VSync on or VSync off. So you will get either artifacting depending on if you turn it off, or if you turn VSync on, you might get not as a smooth experience, but you won't have tearing. So I mean, there's a, no-win situation. So the only thing you can really do is turn down your settings, or buy more faster hardware essentially. But yeah, so G-Sync has its place. I think it's very interesting. I think that it is definitely the future. I mean, if you think about it, monitors and TVs and things haven't really changed that much. I mean, they might look like they have, but in the insides they haven't really changed a whole lot in terms of how they do scaling and frames per second and things like that. So it's very interesting technology. Now, am I going to keep this monitor? No, because for me personally, I want to have the best image quality I can get, and I knew as soon as I got this monitor it wasn't going to be as good as the VA panel I have, because I know the nature of the technology. And TN, even though this might be the best TN panel out there, it's still like light years away from the quality that you get with this VA panel in terms of image quality. So, but if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of image quality, and I say a little bit, but it's actually quite a lot. If you're willing to sacrifice image quality because you want the fastest, most smooth experience gaming, then G-Sync is definitely for you. Me personally, I'm going to keep watching G-Sync. I'm going to wait, and I will purchase another G-Sync monitor once they start using the G-Sync module in a VA panel. I think once they incorporate G-Sync into a VA panel, or once a newer panel comes out that maybe is like maybe once we start getting into OLEDs and things like that, where the contrast ratio and the black levels are amazing, and then we can combine that with G-Sync, that's perfect. So for me, I'm going to wait it out a little bit longer, but I wanted to at least experience myself, and I would definitely say this is not a gimmick. It is definitely worthwhile. Now, G-Sync is very expensive. You're going to spend more money on a G-Sync monitor than you would a non-G-Sync monitor. But the prices are coming down, which is good. I mean, G-Sync today is cheaper than it was when it first came out, that's for sure. I mean, this monitor originally was a lot more expensive when it first came out, and now it dropped in price like over $250 on sale. So it's definitely going to be a good thing in terms of pricing once it comes down even further. So yeah, so for me, if you're an image quality enthusiast, that you want your movies and your desktop and your gamings to all look amazing, and you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of a smooth experience, whether you use VSync or adaptive VSync, IPS G-Sync monitors will look pretty good, but you still won't have the great contrast ratio. You'll have good colors, but IPSs have a big problem with contrast ratio as well, and for whatever reason, they have more light bleed and uniformity issues than VA panels and even TN panels. So I would stay away from IPS. IPS panels work good in little small devices, like a lot of your phones and things like that are IPS. They work good in those, but once you start getting into big screens with IPSs, they don't look good. I've tried so many, and in my opinion, they look like shit. So yeah, the only choice you really have is VA panel for image quality, in my opinion. But the problem is VA panels, they're not as widespread as IPS and TN panels. I do have a GTX 980 Ti coming in. I actually have a 980 Ti right now. That's what's actually installed on my computer right now that's displaying this. But I'm getting another one. I'm going with the Gigabyte GTX 980 Ti G1 Gaming. Right now I just have the EVGA one, and EVGA sucks, in my opinion, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I'm switching from them to Gigabyte in my next video.